Hello guys and welcome to By the Way English. My name's Alistair and in today's video we're going to be looking at place names in the United Kingdom. And we're going to be doing it in a very similar way to how we did things in my very first video with the guessing of names. Basically, how it's going to work is, first I'm going to give you a clue about the British town or city I'm referring to. Then I'm going to give the Spanish translation or Spanish interpretation of that name. Then you'll have a few seconds to figure out the place I'm referring to. And after that, I'll give you a small explanation as to why it has been translated or interpreted in that particular way. Are we ready? Okay, let's start with an easy one. So the clue is, over 60 towns and villages in the United Kingdom have this name. However, its name is perhaps most associated with a famous British scientist who was particularly interested in the pomum and the arbor. And the translation or interpretation is Villa Nueva. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too difficult, because if it was, well, good luck with the rest of them. It's Newton, as in Isaac Newton. So let's have a look at some facts around Newton from New Town. First, there's the obvious spelling difference, where the W is missing from town. Historically, town was pronounced with the long vowel toon, similar to how some people in Scotland still say it today. I'm going down the toon. As the stress in Newton is on the new, the long U in toon would have become a short vowel by the time most of the Newtons were written down for the first time in the Great Survey of England called the Domesday Book in 1086 after the Norman Conquest. Apart from the Newtons, there are many other tons, accounting for around 10% of the place names in the UK, including Boston, Washington, Ashton, Aston Clinton, Milton, Brighton, Everton, Winston and Luton, which were established or named in the wake of the Anglo-Saxon invasions from around 400 to 700 AD. Originally, toon only referred to a very small settlement, specifically with a defensive perimeter around it, and it's this older meaning that we see reflected in its modern Dutch and German cousin words, tuin meaning garden and zaun meaning fence. However, when the Normans arrived a few hundred years later, they equated these tunes with their own villes, and that's how we got town meaning villa. So there you go, Newton is Villa Nueva. Next on our list is the name of a place that has educated over half of Britain's prime ministers and has put pigs' heads to very good use. But its name points to its more humble origins as the Vado de Buey. Okay, considering that 42 out of 55 of Britain's prime ministers were educated at either Cambridge or Oxford, your chances of guessing this one should have been quite high. 76% actually. It's Oxford. First, there's ox, which you will see in many dictionaries being translated as buey. But if you permit me a moment of pedantry, an ox is technically any bovine that has been trained as a draft animal, whilst a buey is a castrated bull. However, given that most draft bovines are castrated bulls, cuela. Then there's Ford. Not that one, not that one, that one. Now I know for most of you city dwellers, when somebody says Vado, you most typically think of this. However, if you spend some time in the countryside, or spent a great deal of your youth playing medieval-themed computer games, you'll know that the original Vado, or ford, is that shallow bit in a river or stream where you can cross without the need of a bridge. We can also see ford in many other place names in the UK, including two football stadiums, Old Trafford and Stamford Bridge, and, like Stamford, there's also Stanford, which both ultimately come from stone ford. And there's also Bradford, meaning Broadford. So there you have it, a place renowned for its prestigious education started its life off as a river crossing for oxen. And now to our final place name. So here's the clue. It's a small town whose name is most famous for the gambling earl it is nominally associated with and the meal that he was particularly fond of. And the interpretation is Villa de Arena. And Villa is not a town this time. Sandwich? Yes, it is indeed a sandwich, Britain's proud culinary gift to the world, one of the few we can actually celebrate. There's also cheddar, but the Americans decided to make it all orange and put plastic in it, globally ruining cheddar's great name. However, the British version is probably the single greatest, most versatile cheese ever created by mankind. And it also goes great in sandwiches. Now, how did we get from Sandwich, the small town, to Sandwich, the great British food? Well, the story goes that the 4th Earl of Sandwich, John Montagu, was an avid gambler, spending many hours at the table. Instead of getting up to go for a meal, he supposedly preferred that his valet fetch him some meat placed between 2 slices of bread so as not to need a fork and a knife or to get his fingers greasy. True or not, we do know that it is because of Montagu's fondness of the sandwich that we call them sandwiches. As for the name of the town itself, I'm sure I don't need to tell you why sand is arena. However, which is an interesting case. It would seem to be an early borrowing by the Germanic languages of the Latin word vicus, meaning farm or village. The diminutive of vicus was vicula, which eventually gave us villa. In Britain, a witch or a wick originally referred to a settlement which produced or traded in something. Gatwick was the market town of goats, Chiswick the market town of cheese, and Woolwich the market town of wool. But this prefix could also just refer to the market town's surroundings. In the case of Greenwich, it was its green fields, and Sandwich its sandy soil. Confusingly, when the Vikings later came along, they also started establishing their own wicks. North Berwick, Berwick upon Tweed, Prestwick, Keswick, and Wick, all referring instead to bays and coves. Curiously, we can also see this wick in the Icelandic capital Reykjavik, meaning smoky bay, and even the Vic in Viking, supposedly referring to somebody who came from the coves or the fjords. Over time, the pronunciations and spellings of these wicks and witches got all mixed up, and in many cases where there is no clear topological indicator, we no longer know which wick is which. But in the case of Sandwich, we do know that the Vikings never properly established themselves in Kent, which means we can safely assume that Sandwich means Villa de Arena. Yum. And that's it for today. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, tell me which story you liked the most, and if you'd like to know anything else about British place names. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.